Now, there are a lot of different ways we can connect. The old-fashioned way for remote access was dial-up lines. And I remember the big security back then was a mandatory callback. So you'd dial into your server, you'd put in your username and password, it would disconnect, and it would call you back at a prearranged phone number, hopefully meaning that it was the same phone number that you used to make the call out there. We have network access servers. VPN concentrators are examples of those, where that's all the box does, is it waits for VPN connections from remote users to allow them access into the network. We authenticate the dial-up and the network access people with some sort of authentication servers, usually Radius or TACACS. Now, Radius stands for the Remote Access Dialing User Service. It's still very popular today. And all it does is it helps be kind of that in-between, between you wanting to have access and the authentication server that it eventually is going to get to, like Active Directory. Some risks you have of remote access, of course, are denial of service, where a user might not be able to get available access in because of some attack. Malicious third parties who might try to gain access and exploit weaknesses in your communication software. And they do this. Not only do they port scan your network, but they attempt to make VPN connections, guessing at usernames, passwords, pre-shared keys, hoping that they get in and get lucky, because once they are, right, they now are inside your network as though they were there themselves personally. Misconfigured communication software. You know, everything has a default setting. All the hackers know the default settings, and they're sometimes looking to see if you know the default settings so you're not using them, even like default passwords. That goes with the misconfigured devices as well. Poor security on the host system. Okay, you allow remote access in, but that doesn't mean I have to accept it or let you do anything you want. And of course, physical security over the remote user's computer. Now, that's interesting. I tell people when I'm teaching hacking courses that one of the things we look at when we're looking for potential targets are the people that work from home, because if I can, you know, when they leave, break into their home, install some sort of spyware on their machine, it's usually very easy because their home computer is not under the same protection as the rest of that whole corporate network. And so I take it over so that when they do make the connection, then I can copy all the things they typed in and make my own. Now, your remote access controls would include things like policies and standards, having the right authorization set up. Remember, need to know, right, least privilege, identification, authentication mechanisms. You should be having encryption tools used and other techniques to secure those transmissions, and of course your system and network management. We're seeing a widespread use now of people using PDAs and cell phones to be able to make the remote connections. And they're doing that in lieu of the desktop and laptop PCs. And it's quite easy to do. There's a lot of companies out there, like Juniper's made this Junos Pulse that runs on the cell phone to allow the secure remote connections. Now, you should have controls implemented with your PDAs, and they could include some of the following: controls for compliance. Now, that's an important aspect, right? Because just because you can doesn't mean that you should, and there may be ways in which we expect that to happen as far as your connections. You should have approval before you're allowed to make the connections. I don't want you to go to some application marketplace and download, some freeware version of a client. Hopefully, you have standard PDA applications that you will mandate. You want to make sure that you exercise due care, especially when it comes down to understanding the security. That's kind of a part of awareness training, and about the ramifications about allowing people to have that access. We have to deal with issues of synchronization. It is possible that you may synchronize information off of the remote server or put stuff onto that remote server, and that stuff could be bad, right? Viruses, malware. We want to talk about encryption for the communications. You should have virus detection and controls over that. So, both on the PDA, even on my Droid phone, I have virus detection software for everything that I look at, and as well as for whatever I'm sending over to the server. The device should be registered, right? No random devices. And you may also want to consider the use of the camera because, again, it's information that could be leaked or could be used against us. There are some access issues with mobile technology. I mean, let's face it, these devices can be used to move data from networks and desktops to mobile equipment or even with removable media. And that's how data files get stolen from a network. I remember, when I had to go do some work with a nuclear laboratory, and I didn't have a top secret clearance, but even if I did, they scan you very thoroughly to make sure you don't have any type of mobile technology. No cell phones allowed in, no removable media of any kind. They put literally sheet metal boxes around each PC, and the only thing you can touch is like the off button. Everything else is enclosed, so you can't even think about trying to get around their disabling of ports. It's pretty intense. And even with all of that security, you think back to that Los Alamos place where suddenly a hard drive was missing with nuclear secrets. That was a big story about 10 years ago. Data can leak out from the use of mobile technology. Today with cameras, right? I can take pictures of your screens, pictures of documents like the old spy movies where they had those really incredibly silly-looking cameras that used actual film. We can do that now. Employees can use their devices to even misuse their own enterprise computing facilities. They can, like I said, take unauthorized copies of data, program. Controls that should be used to stop this is maybe banning the use of all transportable drives, like that nuclear facility I was talking about. The disabling of the USB ports, doing that with a login script so it doesn't even show up as being available. Encrypting all of the data that's transported or saved by these devices. Hey, that's also a big deal, right? If I do put legitimate information on the USB and I lose it, whoever finds it has my data. Same with if I lose my phone, they have my information. So one of the things I like about my virus software is once I realize the phone's gone, I can get online and send a signal and hopefully just purge that information. We have to have policies around to at least to look at the potential of what the risks are and to try to mitigate those. Access rights to system logs for security administrators to be able to perform any activity should really be strictly controlled. Just because you're an administrator doesn't mean you should be able to have that kind of right. Think about it. I've said it before already that if you're a good hacker, everybody knew who you are. If you're a great hacker, no one knows who you are. And that's where I would attack the logs. If I wanted to be the great hacker, I know that I have to get to those system logs, find them, destroy them, or remove evidence that would link my activities in those logs. Likewise, administrators can do that too. So we want to make sure that we restrict that activity. Security managers and system administrators, they should have access to logs for the purpose of review. They don't need to edit those. In fact, really, if you think about it, there's no reason for anybody to have to be able to have edit permission on a log. At most, when it's time to archive them, that's one thing, but most often it should be just reviews. The security logs are your audit trail against data modification, and they should have the most security you can configure. Now, as much as I just made it sound like I like those log files, and I do, I have to admit there's no way I could feasibly read through a log file and get anything useful out of it unless I had tools. Tools to reduce the amount of information that's contained in the audit records so that I can delineate useful information. In other words, I'm not deleting anything, I'm filtering it so that I can find specifically what I'm looking for. You'd call those an audit reduction tool. There are many different types and varieties of tools that can help you. Trend or variance detection tools are there. Attack signature detection tools. There's a whole line of products that are coming out there now for the sole purpose of gathering logs from a variety of different locations and analyzing those logs, looking for trends, looking for known signatures to help give you an indication about what's happening in the world of security and performance within your network.